Philippines Network, Radyo Ronda, DZKI-IRIGA, member kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
CNN Philippines are sa RPN-DZKI-IRIGA alas 6 hasta alas 7 ng manggi, Lunes hanggang Biyernes. CNN Philippines are
change of mind, hundreds of jeepney drivers stopping their operations due to costly fuel. Based on the LTFRB data, more than 700 drivers in the National Capital Region in a span of 5 days.
Kaya pa ba ng operators and drivers to continue? Nakikita sa data, hindi na. Pero kakayanin ba ng commuters kapag nag-increase tayo? Posibleng kakayanin kasi meron namang wage hike.
With less drivers on the road, commuters are now feeling the pinch. Like call center worker Shaina.
Alas 9 yung pasok ko pero andito pa rin ako. Di ko alam kung bus ba or jeep ang sasakyan ko.
Many commuters say they have been willingly paying more than the minimum even before the fare increase. They say it's a small price to pay to keep drivers afloat. There are 2 other pending petitions, one seeking a 14 peso minimum jeepney fare, the other 15 pesos. The LTFRB has scheduled a hearing for June 28th. Meanwhile, 90% of LTFRB franchise holders have received the 6,500 peso fuel subsidy. More than 600,000 tricycle drivers are next in line, but they are only set to receive 1,000 pesos each for the first tranche. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
So will there be another fuel price hike next week? Energy Undersecretary Gerardo Erguisa told CNN Philippines an increase will most likely happen, but less than the price spike that took effect this week.
Ikita natin na may pag-skip pa rin ho sa market. Alam mo naman ho natin ngayon na kakapasa lang ng EU yung kanilang measures na talagang iiwasan ang produkto galing sa Russia. At alam ho natin na ang China ngayon ay nagtanggal na ng lockdown. Kaya yung economic activities po niya, mas nangangailangan siya ng crudo. Yun ang mga indikasyon kung bakit apektado ang daily trading. But compared to last week, in the last 3 days, hindi naman kasing laki last week, but we still have the next 2 days. And alam ho natin ang sistema dito, ina-average dito. But as you've observed, there is an indication na medyo nag-fluctuate ho siya pataas.
In March, President Duterte told the Finance Department to increase the monthly cash aid for poor families from 200 to 500 pesos to cushion the impact of fuel price hikes. The Social Welfare Department says it remains committed to fulfilling that promise. In a briefing this morning, the SWD Director Irene Dumlao says the agency targets to roll out the cash aid program before Mr. Duterte's term ends. The president will step down from office at noon on June 30. Around 12.4 million households are expected to receive the subsidy. From fuel prices to water woes, thousands of residents in southern Metro Manila have had limited water supply since Wednesday. Concessionaire Maynilad announced a week-long service interruption. The company points to the algal bloom in Laguna Lake. Cian Arcangel has more.
JJ Hoxon had to climb up a steep ladder to bring the hose from a Maynilad water tanker to the tank on his rooftop. Hoxon needed to fill up their tank since their village in Las Piñas has been experiencing a 12-hour water interruption since Wednesday. He's lucky to have a tank. His neighbor, Asteria T, needed to wake up early to fill up pails of water.
What we're doing is ngayon parang nasa half lang yung tank namin eh. So pinupuno namin kasi we never know kung kailan sila babalik ulit eh. Sa dami nang wala eh.
Hirap na kami. Imagine, gigising ka ng hating gabi, mag-iipong ka lang. Hindi naman matapos-tapos, hindi naman mapuno yung mga lalagyan mo. Mawawalan ka na ng tubig.
Around 120,000 Maynilad customers are affected by the water service interruption in Parañaque, Las Piñas, Muntinlupa, and the towns of Bacoor and Imus in Cavite. Until June 15, affected areas will experience little to no water supply for 8 hours or even more daily. Maynilad spokesperson Jennifer Rufo says the overabundance of algae at Laguna Lake has slowed down water treatment, resulting in limited water supply for their customers in Cavite and southern Metro Manila.
Quite challenging din yung kalagayan ng tubig sa Laguna Lake sa ngayon dahil meron tayong nakikita na proliferation ng algae. So para maiwasan na maapektuhan yung kalidad ng supply na pinuproduce ng ating planta, ay napilitan po tayo na bawasan muna ang produksyon.
Last February, the Metropolitan Water Works and Sewerage System ordered Maynilad to implement bill rebates due to prolonged water supply interruptions over a 2-month period. Rufo says Maynilad is putting up a silt curtain to filter out algae. Installation is expected to be finished by July.
Once fully installed, target by next month, ay makaka-significantly reduce din yan sa epekto ng high turbidity and algal. Kailangan din magsagawa ng dredging sa lake. So that's something that we are also going to work on. We're currently asking for a permit to do that.
To meet growing demand, Maynilad is constructing a new water treatment plant in Muntinlupa. There are also plans to construct a new water source such as the Kaliwa Dam. Maynilad expects water supply in the affected areas to normalize by June 16. In the meantime, the company deploys water tankers to the affected areas to serve customers.
Hopefully this will be the last, by June 15 okay na ang lahat kasi pag umuulan naman na ay ma-address na dapat yung algae situation.
Maynilad customers are advised to monitor its social media accounts regularly for announcements. Cian Arcangel, CNN Philippines.
In Batangas, local governments are going the extra mile to address the high arsenic level in their groundwater. But as George Cahilas reports, officials can only come up with band-aid solutions for now.
Luz Ariola, a resident of Alitagtag, Batangas, has been extra careful in using tap water after receiving warnings about the high levels of arsenic in their groundwater. Arsenic is a harmful chemical that may cause cancer to humans.
Siyempre, natatakot din kami. Matanda na ako. Kaya kawawa yung aking mga apo na pagdating ng panahon na nakagamit niyan, siya naman maapektuhan.
The local government in Alitagtag reports that there are 2 areas that still have high arsenic content in their water.
Maglaan kami ng pondo para doon sa reverse osmosis na ilalagay namin sa munisipyo na in case na talagang lumala at dumami yung affected na pumping station.
Samantala po natin sasara po ang ating poso dahil po ay delikado ang gamitin.
In Balete, Batangas, the local government decided to shut down wells and pitcher pumps that tested positive of the chemical. As an alternative, the LGU will just ration clean water to affected residents. The local government of Santa Teresita, meanwhile, is exploring the possibility of dilution to lower the arsenic level of water.
Kung may isang baso ka ng positive sa mataas na reading, lalagyan mo ng isang baso na mababa. So, ang mangyayari dyan, mai-even. Bababa yung score. So, pwede mo nang inumin. So, ganun lang ho ang mga nakaprepare naming aksyon.
Tama yung kanina, yung blending. Yun mo ang least costly. Ngunit, ingat kahit yung pagbabantunan ng tubig yung hindi malinis, ay magkakaroon tayo ng microbiological control.
In a meeting on Thursday, The provincial government reminds affected municipalities to continue monitoring the situation and take all the necessary safety precautions. From Batangas City, George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
President-elect Bongbong Marcos meets with U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman. On Twitter, Sherman said they talked about Washington's long-standing alliance with Manila, the economic relationship between the two countries, and human rights. Sherman also met with Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin to talk about enhancing Philippine-U.S. relations amid a transition in Malacanang. Sherman is the highest-ranking U.S. State Department official to visit the Philippines since the pandemic began. She is scheduled to visit other ASEAN countries until Tuesday. Marcos's Justice Chief Designate Boying Remulla admits he has to face complicated problems that have plagued the system. Remulla met with outgoing Secretary Menardo Guevara at the DOJ office in Manila on Thursday. He said the meeting was very formative, but that he might need another one before he assumes the post on July 1st.
Sa first briefing na naganap ngayon, we may ask for a second one kasi masalimuot talaga ang problema ng sistema na kailangan nating isaayos. At talaga nakakatuwa naman na pinaghandaan nila na bigyan kami ng mga impormasyon na nauukol sa mga suliranin na sumasambalot sa ating sistema ng justisya.
Remulla declined to specify the issues he hopes to prioritize. When we come back on Newsnight, President-elect Bongbong Marcos's cabinet continues to take shape ahead of his inauguration on June 30th. We go above and beyond with the incoming press chief, Trixie Angeles. And we tell you about this major development from the province that has become the first to lift the face mask mandate in the country. Stay tuned to CNN Philippines. You're watching CNN Philippines. What are the plans and priorities of the incoming cabinet members of President-elect Bongbong Marcos? The next National Security Advisor, Clarita Carlos, is seeking to continue the operations of the National Task Force to end local communist armed conflict. That's despite previous appeals to abolish the body over red tagging controversies. Carlos also hints that there will be no peace talks with communist rebels under the next administration. She says the government should stop negotiating with communist leaders overseas and instead focus on knowing the insights of rebels in the country. Meanwhile, incoming Agrarian Reform Chief Conrado Estrella admits it would be difficult to achieve Marcos's goal of bringing rice prices down to 20 pesos per kilogram. The former Abono Party List representative points out the high prices of fuel and fertilizer.
Siguro hanggang mga 27 na yan, ganyan. 27, 28, pwede na yan. Pero yung 20, talagang pag-aaralan mo ng gusto yan. Pag-aaralan namin ng gusto. At talagang magsusunog kami ng kilay para magawa natin yan.
Marcos announced their nominations yesterday. He has yet to name the next secretaries of some key departments, including health, agriculture, and foreign affairs. We now go above and beyond the headlines with incoming Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles on new and pending appointees, Marcos's upcoming inauguration, and the push to accredit bloggers in palace briefings. Welcome to Newsnight, Attorney Trixie.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening to you. Let's first talk about the new cabinet members, Clarita Carlos as National Security Advisor and Conrado Estrella for the Agrarian Reform Department. What made them qualify?
It's no secret about Professor Carlos's expertise. The national security is tied up with political concerns, both local and international relations. And so she seems to be quite qualified for the job. Other than that, the president-elect has simply exercised his discretion. Professor Carlos has, in fact, distinguished herself in her own field. And so that was a major consideration.
Mm-hmm. And for the other, former Congressman Estrella, party list representative.
The same, his experience in the field as well as the contributions he has already made. These are general requirements of the president-elect. So at the same, it all falls in.
Pero Attorney, there are still some other posts that have yet to be filled, like yung mga importante ngayon. For example, health for pandemic, meron na bang kinoconsider for that? Also, Defense Department, Foreign Affairs.
Ma'am, we have, I understand that there are discussions ongoing about the choices for these positions. We also understand the concern of the public here. We're just really waiting for the final decision. So they have not given us any information as to when or who they're going to be.
For example, Attorney, yung health department, di ba, very crucial po yan. And then may mga lumulutang din na names. We have, for example, there's Dr. Ted Herbosa because he's with an advisor of the task force, no? May iba pa po bang, can you tell us that names that are being considered, especially for this one?
Ma'am, I really have no information on the names being considered.
Okay, how about for the others? Kasi earlier, si Professor Carlos was also, may report na she was being considered for foreign affairs. How about for that post, Attorney?
Likewise, ma'am, we do not have any information as to who are being considered for any of the positions.
Okay, moving on na lang to another topic. Dun sa inauguration, do you have any other information that you can give us with regards to the venue? Also, maybe yung invitations have already been sent out ba to foreign leaders maybe?
What we do know is that invitations are already being I don't know if they're actually printed, but yes, they haven't been sent out at all yet. So we're waiting for that.
Can you tell us, for example, U.S. President Joe Biden, is he invited, or who others are on the list?
Well, even the guest list, we have no information on that. There are security considerations, so I hope you understand why we do not give out guest lists.
Okay, we get you. Kanina lang po si Mr. Marcos, the President-elect, met with U.S. Deputy Secretary Sherman. Can you tell us more about what they talked about?
Sorry, I really apologize, but the pronouncements on this one will be released by we're waiting for the clearance from the appropriate agencies. with regard to what they exactly talked about. As you understand, diplomatic relations and diplomatic talks are of a confidential nature. So what we can, the best that we can do is wait for the agencies to clear them, and then we will give out a summary of what had been talked about. So we're still waiting for that.
Okay, Attorney, let me just go back to one of your statements about accrediting bloggers or vloggers. Can you give us more details about that? Ano po yung magiging consideration para, because we have the Malacanang Press Corps, di ba? So paano po yun? Will they be part of the Press Corps, or will that be a different group?
Yeah, let me clarify. To begin with, what we're going to do is to evaluate and reassess the existing policy. Because I'd like to point out there is already a policy, and it's in the form of a department order by the PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar. It had not been implemented, so what we're going to do is take a look at it, see if this is the right time to implement the policy. Do we have to make changes? If we're going to make changes, that means that we're going to accredit. If we're going to accredit, who can be accredited and what is the participation? So these are open right now for us to investigate, to study, but the timing is also something that we need to discuss and to decide on. So what's happening is an evaluation of the existing policy. So it's the national discussions on this policy on accreditation of bloggers, where all of these other details seem to be talked about. So let's talk about accreditation. Well, the accreditation process in the old policy required a certain number of followers, and now we're also talking about that if this should happen, and I would like to emphasize if this should happen, then we might also be looking at engagement of each of the bloggers. So we need to know if people are responding to their posts, to the information that they are giving out, and the kind of discussions that are ongoing. Well, not the kind, but for us, if you're able to elicit a response and interest from your audience, then that should also count.
But yung sinasabi po ng ibang critics na parang iba kasi yung standard when you say that you will be accrediting yung mainstream or yung traditional media na usual na nagko-cover po sa MPC, and then for the bloggers or the vloggers.
Well, like I said kasi, yung participation natin dito, hindi pa natin na-formulate. Halimbawa, isa yon, posible na kasama nila yung Malacanang Press Corps. Pero posible din na interviews lang with the President, posible din special events lang ang kino-cover nila, and so on. So kailangan pang i-discuss din yon. Kailangan may decision-making process pa tayo tungkol doon kung naaangkop sila doon sa particular situation. Angkop ba para sa bloggers na mag-cover ng mga press briefings? O dapat iniimbita lang sa particular events? Kapag lumalabas bang presidente, pwede ba na lang isama? Yun po mga yon ay dinidiscuss pa natin at magiging bahagi ng ating bagong polisiya if we should decide na ito na po ang nararapat na oras na ma-include sila sa dissemination ng impormasyon ng PCOO.
Huli na lang siguro, incoming Secretary Trixie, ano po yung nakikita niyo, or how do you envision yung relationship ng Malacanang with the media this time, with the new administration?
Well, the president-elect is a lot, a lot more formal than President Duterte. I'm not saying that anybody outweighs the other. They just have really different styles. But this is also, the president-elect is also a vlogger, and he still will continue with his vlogs, and so he will be engaging the public through his vlogs, through his social media platforms. So this is a little different, and I see that he's more, he is willing to explore all of these other platforms. He's not going to, totally disappear. He will still address the media, the trad media. But this is a president who will be participating in various platforms. So this is kind of, for me, a really cool thing.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us, incoming Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles. Welcome news for aspiring and adoptive parents as officials work to streamline the adoption process in the country. AC Nicholas tells us why the new adoption law is helpful for many Filipino families.
The Brosas family is a typical household, working parents supporting their 3 young children. Though it didn't take the usual path to paint this picture. 2 of the children are adopted, their second son Blake in 2011 and their only daughter Bianca 3 years later.
Ever since I felt the love of my child, of my second child, I've been an adoption advocate.
While their first adoption went smoothly, it took 4 years before Bianca's adoption was finalized by the court. Worse, they almost lost their daughter due to a technicality.
After spending 4 years with the child, with the girl calling me daddy and me calling her daddy's girl, we were denied due to a technicality, and then we took about 8 months again for a motion for reconsideration to finally be approved.
The experience pushed Brosas to lobby for Republic Act 11642 or the Adoption and Alternative Child Care Act. The measure, signed into law just this year, simplifies the adoption of Filipino children. It also creates the National Authority for Child Care, or NACC, which will handle all adoption cases. Adoptions used to not only go through an administrative process before the Social Welfare Department, but also through judicial proceedings before they are finalized. In many cases, it would take years before an adoption is made final.
Based case scenario natin, since ano na lang talaga siya, administrative na lang yung process niya. So, pag okay lahat ng mga requirements, yung mga papers, and then the assessment conducted by the social workers, 6 to 9 months na lang po ang adoption.
The NACC is now working with stakeholders to come up with the new laws implementing rules and regulations. They want to raise awareness about the streamlined process of legally adopting a child, hoping this would stop illegal adoption practices where Filipino babies are sold for as low as 5,000 pesos.
Magkaroon kami sana ng madaming social workers para makapag-conduct ng assessment and reviews kasi crucial yon para hindi namin ma-defy yung pinakang purpose ng law. That's why we need more adoption social workers to be on the ground to review the cases.
The NACC says it will finalize the IRR by the end of June, though they are already processing adoption applications now. With the new measure, advocates and stakeholders are hopeful more Filipino children will get the family they deserve. AC Nichols, CNN Philippines.
In COVID-19 headlines, Cebu Province becomes the first local government to scrap the mandatory wearing of face masks. Cebu Governor Gwen Garcia says masking will only be required in closed and air-conditioned spaces and among those with COVID-19 symptoms. But people are encouraged to continue wearing masks in crowded outdoor places. Garcia's order takes effect immediately. The health department, however, stresses the need for face masks to prevent COVID-19 transmission. Cebu Province is currently under alert level 2. Sports and entertainment updates coming up. Which NBA team grabbed a 2-1 edge in the finals? The Golden State Warriors or the Boston Celtics? And because of popular demand, this 90s boy band is staging a second show in Manila. Get the details here on CNN Philippines. Celtics take back the lead at the NBA Finals, winning Game 3 against the Golden State Warriors 116-100. Boston now has a 2-1 edge in the series. Jaylen Brown delivered another stellar outing for the Celtics with 27 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists. Up next is Game 4, happening on Saturday, 9 a.m. Philippine time. Good news for those who missed their chance to get tickets to Irish boy band Westlife's February 20 concert next year. Another show is happening on February 21st at the Arena Coliseum in Cubao, Quezon City. The first concert sold out within a few days. Passes will be up for sale by June 18th. Louis Tomlinson fans also have another shot at getting tickets for his show in Manila. The July 16 event will now take place at the Araneta Coliseum, following calls from netizens to move the concert to a larger venue. The show is supposed to be held at the neighboring New Frontier Theater. Additional ticket selling begins June 13th. And that's it for tonight. I'm Ruth Cabal, sitting in for Pio Honteveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Emotions still running high a day after the 2022 elections as the outcome is just starting to sink in. Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte headed for a landslide win. Leni Robredo supporters won't move on just yet, but consistent survey and now election frontrunner BBM and the 30+ million who voted for him already have. 4 presidential candidates, Ping Lacson, Isko Moreno, Leody de Guzman, and Faisal Mangundato have conceded defeat. So has VP candidate Tito Soto, while all eyes are on Robredo and her next move. After the political spectacle these past months, can President Marcos and the VP Duterte make good on their campaign promise to unite a nation that has been so drastically polarized? Good evening, I'm Pio Honteveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix. Politics as usual. The son and namesake of the late dictator, former President Ferdinand Marcos, maintaining a wide lead over Vice President Leni Robredo. That is based on the partial and unofficial tally from the Comlex Transparency server. Here are the numbers. As of 7:17 this evening, Marcos has 31,036,142 votes. Leni Robredo has 14,790,393 votes. Manny Pacquiao, 3,626,198. They're followed by Isko Moreno, who has already conceded. Ping Lacson, who has done the same. Faisal Mangundato, Ernie Abella, Leody de Guzman, who has also conceded. Bert Gonzalez, and Jose Montemayor. In the vice presidential race, it is still Sara Duterte on top with 31,482,073 votes. Kiko Pangilinan has 9.2 million votes. They're followed by Tito Soto, who has conceded. And they are followed by Doc Willie Ong, Lito Atienza, Manny Lopez, Walden Bello, Carlos Serapio, and Lito David. In the senatorial race, Robin Padilla is still on top with 26.3 million votes. Lauren Legarda, Robin Padilla has 26.3 million votes. Lauren Legarda, 23.9 million. Rafi Tulfo, 23.1 million. They're followed by Win Gatchalian, Cheese Escudero, Mark Villar, Alan Cayetano, Migs Biri, Joel Villanueva, JV Ejercito Estrada, Risa Honteveros, and Jingoy Estrada. In the top 12, number 13 is Jojo Binay, 14, Herbert Bautista, 15, Gibot Teodoro, and they're followed by Gilor Eliazar, Harry Roque, Greg Onasan, Chel Diokno, and Larry Gadon. The COMELEC, the Commission on Elections, sitting as the National Board of Canvassers, beginning its official count for the Senate and party list race tonight, 24 hours since voting closed Monday, May 9. We bring in our Melissa Lopez from Pasay City. Mel, what is happening there?
Pia, COMELEC and Bank has resumed its formal session as the National Board of Canvassers a little past 7 p.m. today, and they have been able to start the official count for the Senate and party list race coming from one area. As of 7:30 p.m., COMELEC has reported that 98.7% or about 104,000 voting precincts have already electronically transmitted their results, but not all of the local boards, namely the city, municipal, and provincial boards, have finished canvassing. So the results cannot be transmitted yet here at the PICC Forum tent. Now, the Malabon City election officer arrived a little past 5 in the afternoon earlier, and they have brought in 2 ballot boxes containing the certificates of canvass and the statement of votes in the area. Now, behind me, the NBOC Secretariat operated the canvassing laptop of COMELEC to download the electronic copy of that COC, and then they printed it and put it side by side the physically delivered COC from the city of Malabon, and it has to match. They invited poll watchers, representatives of parties, of candidates, to check if the numbers did tally with each other, and when it did, it was officially added to the official count for the 2 races. Pia.
Mel, what's next after Malabon? And earlier, there was Abra, right, that was set aside. Malabon, what's next after Malabon?
Right, Pia, they first tried to canvass votes from the province of Abra, but they soon realized that they only had the electronic copy rather of the votes. But what COMELEC needs, or what the NBOC needs rather, is 2 copies. So one is electronically transmitted, the other must be physically delivered here at the PICC Forum tent. And right now, we are seeing just a second ballot box being delivered. So we are not yet sure which area this is coming from, but unless more areas or local canvassers are able to bring in the official copies, printed copies from their local canvassing, the national level canvassing will have to be put on hold. Pia.
This is a first in, first out. Kung ano yung unang dumating, yun ang ika-canvas agad.
That's right.
All right. Melissa Lopez there reporting from PICC COMELEC's headquarters as the National Board of Canvassers, because they are doing the senatorial and party list count. Now, the accredited citizens arm of COMELEC, the Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting, or PPCRV, is doing a parallel count or manual encoding of electoral returns to check possible discrepancies in the digital transmission of votes. Our AC Nichols is at the PPCRV's command center in UST Manila. What is the update, AC?
Well, she says during
Command Center has received Manila, Makati, Mandaluyong, and Pasay. Earlier today, we were told that over 2,000 ERs have been manually encoded already. Now, the group is expecting more ERs to come in or to be brought here at the command center from a number of areas, including Cavite, Rizal, and Batangas. Now, there's a bit of delay in the transport of election returns, as PPCRV volunteers are consolidating them first by parish before turning them over to the command center. And in some precincts, the Electoral Board also refused to give the PPCRV the 4th copy of election returns, but the group said these incidents are isolated and are easily resolved.
We have an open line with the COMELEC, and we asked them for help. Kasi ang nangyari was just miscommunication. Okay, most of the teachers, they were confused kung kanino ibibigay yung 4th copy because the general instructions says that the fourth copy will be given to the accredited citizens arm. It did not say PPCRV. But nothing that, na-explain naman sa kanila.
The manual audit is done 24/7. This is another way of verifying the digitally transmitted results from the transparency server. Those are the numbers flashed on the big screen here at the command center for the PPCRV's parallel unofficial quick count. No shortage in volunteers. We're seeing long lines of people waiting for their shift or for their turn to man the computers. Pia.
Yeah, AC, as you've been reporting since yesterday, what PPCRV is doing is comparing yung hard copy ng ER at yung digital transmission. In 2019, like you've already said, 99.995% matching rate. No? But for now, what is going on in that regard?
So far, Pia, the PPCRV has yet to note any discrepancies, no? But I want to mention again that only almost 5,000 ERs have arrived here at the or have been brought here at the command center. That's a very small number. Remember, we have over 107,000 clustered precincts nationwide. So we should still monitor the next few days kung ano yung mangyayari or kung may updates sa matching rate. No discrepancies so far, but they have noted mismatching in figures, but only among encoders. Because for those who don't know, how they do the manual audit is the ERs pass through 2 encoders. And it's not irregular according to the officials that there are mismatching figures sometimes. It happens, for example, if may typo lang or ma-misread ng isang encoder yung data doon sa election return. But before they archive the data, it goes through a final check. No? So kung makita naman sa final check na okay, the reason why there was mismatching was because na typo lang or mali lang ng basa ng isang encoder, then they correct it before archiving. Yeah.
AC, earlier at 6:25 this evening on Newsnight, you were reporting that PPCRV already has 97% in. It is now 8:10 in the evening, about an hour or so more. What is the number now, right now?
In the latest update, 98% or votes from 98% of the total clustered precincts have been transmitted already through the transparency server. And based on the latest numbers, in the race to Malacanang, BBM retains his huge lead with over 31 million votes. Vice President Leni Robredo at second with 14.7 million. In the vice presidential race, Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte also garnering over 31 million votes so far, followed by Senator Kiko Pangilinan with 9 million votes. For the senatorial race, actor Robin Padilla retains the top spot. Other administration-backed candidates entering the top 12 are Loren Legarda, Jinggoy Estrada, and Alan Peter Cayetano. Senator Risa Honteveros is the lone opposition, making it to the top 12. Yeah.
AC Nichols there reporting from PPCRV's command center in UST Manila. Thank you very much, AC. Now joining us here in the studio is political analyst and former presidential spokesperson Edwin Lacerda. You seem to be here very often. But welcome back. We're so happy to have you. So last night, nandito ka. You were here when all the numbers were starting to come in. And it's been 24 hours. There's still some, medyo mataas ang emotions, no, ng mga Lenny supporters, for example. No? How would you address them now? Although you are not naman, hindi ka naman bahagi ng Lenny campaign ngayon.
Well, I think there's this thing going around that there's a variance, there's a problem with the COMELEC o the transparency server count, or by and large, pareho lang naman ang results figures ng tatlong servers na yun. So they're questioning that. So I think may believe sila na nadaya si Lenny, and therefore we should make sure that the count is the real count is tabulated.
That's not what COMELEC is doing now?
That's COMELEC's
That is
count
COMELEC,
already.
yeah.
But, so that's why
And there is PPCRV's count
there's
also.
PPCRV there. So PPCRV, we know it's non-partisan. So, and it's media gets exposed, gets all the figures. No? In fact, you're reporting ahead of the official count, which is basically the same numbers that they're going to report in. So fundamentally, I don't know what we're looking for, actually. Except maybe perhaps for the number of VC machines that weren't working. The question, at the end of the day, will be, assuming that they're all correct, would those uncounted VCs that were not transmitted be sufficient enough to overturn the votes? So is this going to be how long will this take? I think at some point, there will have to be closure at some point. And it's up to VP Lenny and Senator Kiko to make the proper decision. But right now, it's ongoing. And by the way, you're talking about the day after, the first big news, the stock exchange went down. The PSE index went down to its lowest in 9 months. That's hardly surprising, by the way, because during the campaign, we've seen already a number of economists saying that if Marcos becomes president, this is what's going to happen. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now that he's going to be most likely the incoming president, you're seeing the economic forecast coming through.
Yeah, okay. Well, 2 follow-up questions. Number 1, nadaya ba si Lenny as far as you're concerned? And number 2, when you say that there has to be closure at a certain point, what point is that? And, how are we going to see that? Early this morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, Lenny addresses her supporters and says, malinaw ang lumalabas. But at the same time, she's calling for a pagtitipon, I think was the term that she used, no? On Friday, May 13.
I think it's also a continuing show of gratitude to the supporters and also to the passion that shouldn't be dissipated after the election. It shouldn't be for election lang itong passion na to because she has largely awakened the political consciousness of a number of citizens. And that's good. That's good because we need a strong civil society, which has largely dissipated in the Duterte administration. So we need the revival of civil society movements, which is very, very, by the way, very peculiar to the Philippine political experience. We have a very strong civil society movement historically. And so I think this would be a revival of a strong civil society movement. Now, obviously, it has to be in the civil society space because if VP Lenny is going to lead this, she won't be leading from a government position. And that's the reason why I think it would be good for Lenny to continue to harness all this. These are all positive. Let's turn passion, let's turn frustration, let's turn anger into something positive, perhaps like media speaking truth to power and really just checking on the incoming government. Because of so many concerns that we have, right? So it's something that we should be doing.
Holding them to account. We'll be back after a quick break. Stay tuned. This is Politics as Usual. Welcome back to Politics as Usual. This is I'm Pia Honteveros. Still with us is former presidential spokesperson and political consultant Edwin Lacerda. We're going to have Myla Villanueva, chair of the PPCRV, in just a bit, live from PPCRV's command center in UST. Edwin, what kind of a statement do we need to hear from Lenny and Kiko? Does it have to be as clear as we concede, I concede, but this is what we're going to do? Because
I think it's important for Lenny to address first his supporters, win or lose.
But she did that this morning.
And I think she'll do it again because I think she's being looked upon as the leader. She's really the leader right now of the opposition and whatever movement that will be morphed into. My point lang kasi, yung tapos ng election, at some point, we will inaugurate a new president. So the protest will move some elsewhere. Does it become a formal electoral protest? Di ba? So, kailangan talaga...
But you think there can be an electoral protest?
Hindi
With a
natin
lead
alam
like that?
We don't know yet if there's evidence as they're claiming, if there's evidence. But I think it's also, there's fault that lies with COMELEC rin, because they had 3 years theoretically. Elections are every 3 years. To prepare all these VCMs. And whatever the nature or there must have been some maintenance problems with all these machines. Kaya, the 3 years could have been done, or at least the last year would have been done to make sure that those machines were functioning. And because of all these faulty machines, that's why you cannot take away the blame na. You parang the saying, you only have one job. Di ba?
Yeah.
You've just got one job to do.
Pero
it.
electoral protest, you're going after...
That is assuming that it's already
the winner,
post-election na yan eh. Post-election controversy.
And then why don't they
na yan.
go after COMELEC?
Why don't they go after COMELEC?
Yeah.
Because they're still in the counting stage. So
But
they're
later
asking,
on nga,
they're
if
asking
they
COMELEC to explain.
If they want to make COMELEC accountable for these malfunctioning VCMs, instead of filing an electoral protest, or, because syempre iniisip ng tao, kung electoral protest, medyo dapat maliit ang lamang or very clear ang evidence na talagang nandaya.
You're asking mga pwedeng gawin, no? So that's the most extreme na magpa-file ka ng protest. But between now and at least kung ano magagawa, nakita na natin, the people are already complaining before COMELEC. You got a huge rally kanina, and then they're being asked to explain all these things. But like I said, may counting yan eh. May 3 servers yan. In the same way in 2019, where there was the 7-hour glitch, at some point, natapos din yung ganun, yung controversy yun. Whether she will concede, when she will concede, it's up to, I don't know the timeline of VP Lenny, but I'm certain that I think the whole movement that she has developed is a victory already on its own. So it's up to her whether she feels it's time to concede. I would leave that to VP Lenny.
Earlier this evening on Newsnight, I was speaking to Michael Yusinko, political analyst also, and, I was asking about this whole scenario, and he was saying what he wants to do is to move on. Parang people are allergic to that term, but anyway, parang to move forward, no? And then, ang gusto niyang tingnan is, ano ba yung magiging composition, halimbawa, ng cabinet, no? Ni incoming President Marcos. And he says, this is where the real work will begin. This is where our love for country will be tested. So the question is, who will be part of this cabinet? And we did talk about that also last night to a certain extent.
Look, the fact that the stock market went down first day after the election shows that there's little confidence in the Marcos administration. That's why he has to immediately form and inform the public, this is going to be my economic team. And for a team to be credible, you have to have people professionals, respectable and credible. So that's the chance. That's the first onus of President Bongbong Marcos, that he has to form it as sooner than dati, kasi we can take time eh. You have this whole thing of pipili. Ngayon, kailangan unahin muna yung economic team, kasi ito yung problema ngayon. Right. You see the lack of confidence of not only for local businessmen, eventually the international investors might also worry and just leave mag-capital flight. That's one thing that we don't want to happen.
All right, Edwin, we'll get back to you in just a bit. We're going to speak first, and I have a follow-up question for you on that. We're going to speak to PPCRV Chairperson Myla Villanueva. Myla, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. Have you been able to rest? Nakapagpahinga ka na ba? Hindi pa.
No, Pia. Hindi pa.
Okay. All right, so 98...
Good evening, Pia.
Yes, good evening. 98%, that's what's already in. So for you, and you have this... you're going to be comparing the hard copies of the 4th copy of the ER with the digital transmission. So far, is it so far so good? What have you discovered during that process?
Yes. So, Pia, of course, the polls closed at 7, and our coordinators across the country have to collect the ERs from all over. And it is natural that the first ERs that have come into the arena at the UST is coming from NCR. But I just received the report that Luzon is starting to come in also. So we have about 5,006 plus about 2,400 from Luzon.
5,006 plus 2,400. And the pace is, you're happy with the pace. Tama yung how things are going.
First of all, Pia, the arena is packed with young volunteers who have been lining up outside. I understand it had reached España all the way to Lacson. There is a high degree of interest, and the volunteers were waiting for hours. We didn't expect it. They were walking in. So they're working. We're probably going to stay open until the wee hours of the morning because the volunteers are up to the bleachers here at the USC Arena. So far, the matching has been in order, and I just want to wait for a more representative body of ERs to come in before we start talking about match rates.
All right. There is also a very high degree of interest in your count. People are watching the COMELEC count, and we can see this very huge lead that BBM has mounted over the second placer, Lenny Robredo. So yung the eyes will shift towards the PPCRV count. And I'm sure you feel that, right?
Yes, we feel a lot of things, Pia. Of course, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of disinformation. So we're taking steps as the day goes on, and there are big interest in certain things. First of all, we, as usual, and is common, we ask the COMELEC for logs around the transmission and the other details about VCMs and SD cards, and we will get that shortly, and we will report to you in a while. There's also a lot of questions around the speed of transmission or certain patterns that I was asked in the earlier news cycle, and I wanted to say that we asked experts from the math department of Ateneo and UST. They were here today, and I'm inviting the other universities to be with us tomorrow. And as of the last news cycle around 6:30, they have not found any irregularity in the transmission patterns that people have seemed to talk about in social media this morning.
Patterns, variants, because exactly like you said, sa social media, umiikot yung mga graphics na yon. So you're parang telling people na kalma lang, no? We haven't found all these math experts, and that's important. We have these subject matter experts who are on it and have not found anything.
As of the moment, yes. And let's also say that they are PPCRV volunteers, but they're also from universities that I have invited.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add, Myla, that people should know?
Well, first of all, I want to thank our volunteers across the country. They worked so hard, Pia. I mean, it was hot. There was a lot of people. They worked after the precinct closed to pick up the returns, and then they have to bring it here. So we were polling the coordinators until 4 a.m., and they were still at work. So I think the nation owes them a lot of gratitude. I myself, I'm so deeply touched by the way they worked on election day. So thank you very much to them.
Well, we are grateful to PPCRV volunteers and to you. Thank you very much, Myla Villanueva, PPCRV Chair. We'll speak to you again very soon. Salamat and take care. We'll get the latest from the Marcos and Robredo campaigns when we return. This is Politics as Usual. Stay tuned. Emotions still running high a day after the 2022 elections as the outcome is just starting to sink in. Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte headed for a landslide win. Lenny Robredo supporters won't move.
Radio. DZKI-IRIGA welcomes CNN Philippines to bring you the latest. News you can use, news you can trust. Listen to Newsnight, weekdays, 6 p.m.
We now go above and beyond the headlines.
Followed by Med Talk, Health Talk.
We'll talk about how to keep ourselves healthy during the pandemic.
Politics as usual.
In this country, not everything really goes according to plan, and politics is, as usual,
Up close and more. Catch CNN Philippines Hour on DZKI-IRIGA. Weekdays, 6 to 7 p.m.
Kumakalat breaking tweet ni at hindi ito scam. All caps, gamot sa cancer. Question mark. Miracle tea exclamation. Mapa stage 1, stage 2, stage 100. First 100 emoji to DM will be healed with good hair.
Huwag paloko, mag-fact check muna. Ang totoong balita, tunog tama, dapat tama. Isang paalaala mula sa KBP at ng istasyong ito.
Click number 2. Order now. Arrow down. Arrow down.
Ay, insyo. Madya daw din.
CNN Philippines Hour sa RPN-DZKI-IRIGA alas 6 hasta las 7 ng manggi, Lunes hanggang Biyernes. CNN Philippines Hour.